Hey everyone, welcome back to the Zen Curious. Today we're going to get to know my co-host Lauren Tancredi. She is going to share a little bit about her personal journey of reconnecting with her intuition and finding joy through play. Lauren shares about how societal pressures can distance us from our inner wisdom and how the simple act of play and self-care can bring us back to our self. And don't forget to check out our free 7-day awareness challenge on the website, designed to help you deepen your mindfulness practice and find more peace in your life. Let's dive in and get to know Lauren. Okay, we are live. We talk all the time on like this on Zoom or whatever, but you put a camera on and start recording and it's like, ah!
Yeah.
But this is super exciting. The Zen Curious, we're finally live. We've been talking about this for a while. We're talking about like how we partner together and just kind of like merge our magic. So tell us where you're from and where you live now.
All right. I was born in beautiful Hartford, Connecticut, and I grew up just outside of there in Farmington most of my life. Today, I am living in Tampa, Florida, and it took me a lot of stops and places to get here. That's for sure.
Okay, a quote you live by.
Be the change you want to see in the world. It's like everything
Love that.
starts from the inner game, right? And so if we're not paying attention to who we're being, how can we expect anything different from anybody else?
Love it. Your superpower.
I would say, I was thinking about this one and it's either one of two things, but I'm going to say my ability to help people with their big dreams and like find the detail behind it, right? It's like I've been
Mm.
working in this world of like business and helping people bring their dream practices to life in the healthcare arena. And so, a lot of times folks come to me and they're like, "Oh, here's everything I want to do." And my superpower is like, "Okay, here's how we make it happen." And so I would say that's
Yeah,
definitely my zone of genius.
definitely. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And many other things actually too. But
Yeah. Yeah.
what are you grateful for?
Man, it's so hard to just name one for all of these questions, right? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
what am I grateful for today? That we're launching, that we're live right now, and that it gets to just be like perfectly imperfect and in progress, and we get to have fun the entire time. So I'm down with that. I'm
Amen
grateful for
to
this
that.
moment. Yeah.
Amen. What is one practice that brings you the most zen?
Lately, I would definitely have to say, like being in nature, like just connecting my feet
Mm.
to the earth. Yesterday, I planted some stuff outside. And so, like, just like reconnecting back. I think the last time we talked, you had been gardening too. It's like definitely a theme, but like just reconnecting to, the mother, our planet for sure.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so the first question um, that I'd like to kind of go a little bit deeper on is what does zen mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. It's part of the reason that we're talking about this, right? It's like this unconventional path to peace. And when I think about it, it's like I can remember this first moment when I experienced like what I would call my Zen moment, right? And it was when I was in my yoga teacher training. It was back in like 2000 and I don't know, 10 maybe a little bit later than that. And I remember sitting there one day and being like, "Oh my God, the chatter stopped." The chatter in my
Mm.
head completely silenced itself. And it was like this, I even have goosebumps talking about it right now
Mm.
because, growing up in the family that I did, in the culture that I did, like I should all over myself a lot of my life.
Mm.
Right. And so I'm constantly hearing these voices in my head of like what I should be doing or how I should be acting or if I should have done something differently and like literally just shooting all over me. And I remember after this yoga class, and I'd probably been like a couple of months into my training, like walking down the street and being like, holy cow, what happened? There's nothing in my head. And it was like
Mm.
the most liberating moment. And I'd practiced yoga before and had like euphoric moments, but this time it really something just kind of landed a little bit deeper for me. And it was fairly phenomenal to realize like how much shit I'd been telling myself
Oh my
all of
gosh,
these
so
years.
much. Yeah, I love that. Yoga is one of the things that I do to find peace, but like getting into it every time I'm like, oh. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And then that moment where you're laying in Shavasana at the end and you're like thinking about how your practice impacted you, like it's such a euphoric feeling.
Yeah.
So I know that feeling you're talking about. And it is so good.
Yeah,
It
it
is so
is.
good.
It's so like juicy to be in this space, right? And I think the only other time I really experienced it like that profoundly, like where it almost shook me, right, is like I did a sensory deprivation tank once, and it's literally,
Mm,
if you haven't done it, it's like really salinated water, like super salty, right? So you float in it, and a lot of times at first you're like trying to figure out your head, because your head is this giant thing that you're carrying on your shoulders all day long, and you're like, I'm like, oh my God, how do you keep it up? And so you're like, put your hands in the back of your head and just like start to rest, and like, and then I'm freaking out because I'm like, I don't want to be in this little egg. I'm totally like claustrophobic. Am I going to survive? And at one moment, I finally like started to rest, and it made me feel like I was back in the womb, right? Because you are like literally
mm,
void of any other experience happening. There's no light. There was some sound coming in because they played music in there, but it's like just this vast void. And it's almost like I could experience in that 30 minutes, like what it takes for years to get into meditation sometimes. And it's just like this
yes.
emptiness, this total blank canvas, right? And I remember like falling, I don't know if you've ever had those dreams, but sometimes I have a dream I'm falling and you like shake yourself awake, right?
Yeah.
And I totally did that in the tank. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, where am I? And I was like, I felt like I literally went through this birthing canal again. And it was like, it was like peaceful, but at the same time, like shocking to my system, because I had not been in
Yeah.
so much like quietness and like solitude. It was so amazing. Yeah, I think that's the only other time where it's like my head, this giant thing, right? This thing that's so heavy on our bodies, was actually like void of any thought, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, those are the moments, those are the Zen moments for me, like how you find those things where we become so aware of what we are thinking or not thinking,
Mm,
that allows us to like feel differently so that we can act or become this version of
mhm.
ourselves that we desire, right? And so many
Yeah.
times our thoughts are our limitations. And so going back to like, so what does Zen mean to me? It means like having the freedom of a blank canvas, having like the void of any other like influential experience from other people's mouths, or even like
Mm.
ancestral or lineage, like karma coming forward and influencing our own lives in some way. Yeah.
So good. Yeah. I think that even how you just described it, it's a perfect representation of even in this path to Zen, like even people who meditate all the time, I think what you find in the practice is that it takes those moments of not being in it to even recognize what being in it looks like, what being
Sure.
in it feels like.
Yeah.
You have that like that
Contrast.
right, right. And
Yeah.
it's and I think a lot of times we seek like this idea of perfection even in
Mm,
the peace that keeps us from it. You
sure.
know, like if it doesn't look like how I think it's supposed to look like, then it's not really it. But
Mhm.
like that whole experience you just described in the deprivation tank, sensory deprivation tank,
Yeah.
is it. Like it's these moments of like frantic trying to figure out am I doing it the right way? What's gonna happen? I'm not ready to let go. I don't want to let go,
Yeah.
to letting go and just realizing the universe, God has your back and you can surrender to it,
That's
right?
definitely been the game this year for me. It's like the ultimate act of trust and surrender, and
Mm,
really like seeing where my ego wants to like hold on to this version of me that has allowed me to get to where I've been. Right. And it's so interesting because I've been doing a lot of like, not studying, I guess I'd say, but there's just things that have been coming into my space even this last week or so. It's like, about living in this present moment. Right. And just like,
mm,
and so I started taking another course. It's called Awaken the Muse, with one of the women I've trained with, Alexi Panos. She's amazing, and Emily Gallagher. And they look for these these ruptures in our life, because once we start to say yes to something, like something else blows up, right? Something in our life blows up in order to make space for something new to come in. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, of course there's all kinds of like ruptures that are happening, but I had gone to a concert um, last week or the week before with my sister. She was here in town, and I was like in the back of it's sold out. And me, I don't love crowds. Like I'm not a big,
Yeah.
I don't like to, I'm super empathic. I feel everybody's energy. And at the same time, like I definitely have this underlying story of being safe. Right. And
Mm,
so being in a place that's sold out, I immediately look for the exit. And how do I stay close to the exit? Because
mm.
I don't know what's happened to me, but it's definitely been another lifetime where I want to make sure I can exit. Right. And so
Yeah.
I've got this safety thing. And so we were there with a group of people. My sister went with half the group up towards the front of the stage, like in this corner where there's no exit. It's like the farthest thing from the exit. My friend Natalie and I stayed in the back, and I was having a really great time and connecting. And we went to go grab some water. And she's like, "Well, where do you want to go? Do you want to go back or do you want to go forward?" And I'm like, "I want to go forward, man. There's no going back. Let's go forward." And so I was like, went up there, and we went up there in what presumably would have been a very crowded area because it's like, like 10 feet from the rail. And we're standing there and I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. There's space here. Who would have thought it? Right. And I'm standing there and I'm listening to these guys play music. And it's like a Tuesday night. And my ego, my professionalism is like, oh, it's only gonna be another hour because there's a noise ordinance. And then you get to go home and be in bed and be responsible. But I noticed like the whole night, what I was doing was waiting for the end.
Mm.
And a lot of like even my days sometimes like they're so heavy and packed, and it's like, how do I finish this thing to get to the next thing? And so I'm having this moment of like rupture. And so I'm standing up there, I'm watching these guys play. It's a totally different view, different perspective. And I see on the keyboardist has a clock, and you could see the time because obviously they want them to finish on time. And I noticed
Right.
that there's an hour left. And so here I am like, oh my God, Lauren, how are you going to stay an extra hour? Blah, 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 blah. And like, I'm not even being present to the moment that I'm in,
Mm.
that I've worked so hard to do. And I have this deep burning desire to play, yet here I am already moving on to, I need to go to bed and be up in the morning to make sure that I take care of X, Y, and Z. And just realizing, and this is again, part of this, like, the stories that are playing in my head so that I can't be fully alive in the moment.
Mm.
Right. And so it's like, how do I come back into that, the presence, like really being present? And I was thinking about what's my superpower this morning. And one of the things I was going to say is like listening and having this ability to deep listen and being
Yeah.
present for other people, which I can, but for myself, it is the biggest challenge. Right. And so
Oh my gosh.
again, I
Yeah.
equate this kind of like to this Zen moment. And how could I relax into that moment? Because there's something inside of me that wants so badly to perform and to play into this, like this role or responsibility that I've created for myself of like being
Hmm.
responsible and having to take care of things. And then my child inside's like, I just want to dance and look like a crazy girl and like have fun and move around. And, you know, through the breath
She
and a
wants to
lot of
play.
right, through the breath, and a lot of what I'll talk about probably is, the power of the breath. It's like, "Oh, I actually got to relax into my body. Oh, look at how cool it is when the musicians are playing, they're, like, talking to each other, like, these guys are, like, getting it, like, blues grassy, like, having fun." And it's like all of these instruments, there's, like, 3 horns and 4 or 5 other guys, and, like, they're just talking to each other, and this is
Yeah.
so cool because it's a whole 'nother language, and, like, really just allowing ourselves to like relax into the moments that are here instead of
Mm.
continuing to futurize stuff. And I think there's a
Yep.
place for futurization. Like we want to visualize, we want to take ourselves out of the past and the stories and the critics and all of the things that have like put limitations on us. I think there is a
Yeah.
place to futurize, and there's also a time to be present. And I think that again is kind of like in the most zen way of existing is like really leaning into what's here and you can connect to in each and every moment or each and every breath.
So there is like so much juice in everything you just said. I could
Ah,
probably spend an hour talking about that, but I did like I think that I experience a lot of what you described in a little bit of a different way, but like particularly in being a mom. Like
yeah.
I have found myself because now my kids are 10 and 15. and I look at pictures because the damn phone gives you those on this day
Yeah, memories.
reminders,
Yeah.
and they pop up and it like brings me to my knees like almost every time. I'm like, how did all of this time pass? It
Mhm.
goes so fast, and I spent so much time wanting out of each phase because it
Mm.
was hard. Instead of just being, or because I was trying to control the outcome of it, and
Oof.
because I just couldn't be in that moment. And it is a gut wrenching feeling to realize that that time is gone.
Mhm.
And now, like, what, and now I'm more aware now. And I guess, it's part of everybody's journey, right? Like figuring that stuff out. But like, being in the present moment, not trying to control it, not trying to make it end because it's hard. Like that is life. Like that is the freaking beauty of it.
Yeah,
This shit
totally.
is not easy.
It is not, man. And even like, the thing I did to go have fun was hard. It was hard for me to arrive in that moment, right? It's like even the good, juicy parts sometimes are hard because we've
Yeah.
created these things like a limitation, or even for me, it was like, okay, when I started to slow down, it's like, oh my God, I could feel my body and my body feels like exhausted. And why does it feel so heavy? Right. And it's like, well, I worked out at the gym all day in the morning and then I sat around all day. And it's like, and then when's the last time I went out and danced? Come on, like be real, like no wonder your body's like going through this adjustment period. And just like, so, like you said, it's like, I don't know if it's just like as we get older, time kind of speeds up because the context of time shortens, right? When we're little, it's like time sees forever, but that's all we know.
Yeah.
We know this much time. And when we're older, we're like, no, this much time. And everything's like these bleeps that are happening now. And so
Right.
it just like speeds things up. And like, really, like that's another good kind of quote that I would probably live by. But, slow down to speed up. You've got to
Mm,
slow down to speed up, and really
yeah.
just like cherish like each and every moment that's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So good. Okay. So tell us a little bit about like how you got here, because you don't just like it starts somewhere. Like what kind of got you on this curiosity, or to start this journey, and also, as you talk about that, maybe the most impactful um modality that you feel like you have
yeah,
in your
sure.
Zen practice.
Um, yeah, so I would say, and I remember doing an interview with one of my other friends at a podcast once. She's like, "When did you first become like spiritually aware?" Like, I remember being 5 years old, being like, "How did I get in this body?" Right? Like, always having this curiosity and awareness that got closed down at some point
Mm,
in life. And so, it's a really great question because I don't know exactly what it was, but I will say, like, when I was living back in Tampa, Florida in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was in college or just finished college. So, yeah, it had to be like 2003. And I would walk twice a week to a yoga studio by my house. And I remember this woman who is amazing. She still teaches today, like 20 years later, which is also phenomenal,
so cool.
with her long silver hair and like just going through all of these different, yoga poses. But one of the things that we had done was this breath. And we were doing this breath and coming back up and inhaling and exhaling out, like doing this like really beautiful, like circular breath. And I got
Mm.
so high. Like I got so high and I was like, what is this? I feel amazing. Like it was like so totally euphoric, right? And I had been in a yoga practice, but I never really tapped into the breath that way. Again, like I think a lot of it was, coming into the body, but going through the poses and not really connecting to them, like just ticking the boxes. Here's Lauren ticking the boxes once again, right? And
Mm.
having this like moment where I was like, oh my God, whatever just happened to me, like I want more of it, right? And then fast forward and I move out west. I continue to do some yoga practices. Now I'm in Vegas. I'm practicing Bikram yoga and it's like 100 degrees outside and 108 degrees inside. Like, who am I? Like, what am I
Mm.
thinking? Right. And like, still just like trying to connect to myself, to my body. And a lot of my like late teenage years, even in through my college, like full of disassociation, drug, sex,
Mm.
alcohol, like, like anything I could do to not be here, not be here,
Mm.
because I didn't really, again, know like how to connect to who I truly was, or this aspect of, like you said earlier, magic, where we get to merge magic with people in the world.
Can I ask you, were you aware that that's what you were doing when
No
you were
idea. No
okay,
idea. I was just doing what I thought everybody else was doing, right? You're
right.
like birds of a feather, my grandmother would say. And it's like,
Yep.
I was hanging out with people that were partying all the time. And so that's what we did. We partied and like,
Yep.
did the things and realizing like, these stories continue to like show up and come up for me. So my yoga practice continued. I went out to the desert at one point for this thing called Bhakti Festival. It's in Joshua Tree. I think that's in
Oh, that
Mexico
sounds
now.
cool.
Oh my God, it's so awesome. Joshua Tree, if you haven't been, magical place in and of itself. So go out to this 3-day the yoga festival with my sister and her partner and some of our friends at the time. And it's like, just super juicy. We're like diving in, stretching, connecting with people. And on day 2, we tried to go to this breath work ceremony, and there was like hundreds of people lined up. They had to close the doors because there was not enough room in there. So the next day, we're lining up early because everybody comes out of that thing and they're talking and like, so like, oh my God, I can't believe this experience. Like, you have to go try this out. And so, like, it's all the rage, right? So we line up like an hour early. We go inside, we get our spots. And I have no idea what the heck I'm doing, right? I'm just like, I just lay down, I'm in the flow. And I think part of it was I had this experience because I was so open already from being there for 3 days and doing all
Mm,
the yoga, right?
mhm.
Um, and we do this ceremonial, like shamanic breath work, kind of like holotropic, all through the mouth, nothing through the nose. And there's a man in there, Michael Brian Baker. He's singing Icaros, right? So straight out of the jungle. And I start breathing. And the next thing I know is like I'm like seeing like sacred geometry. Buddha comes in, Mother Mary, and at the end, my girlfriend Mary, who had just passed away a couple of years before.
Mm.
And at this point, he's calling everybody back into their bodies, and I can't move. Right. So I'm breathing. Now I can't move. I finally get up. I'm like totally purging, snot coming all down my face, crying hysterically. And he's talking about how he had like called in Mother Mary. And here I am seeing my girlfriend Mary come to me. And I had also like simultaneously like astral projected and walking around the festival while I'm in the room. Like crazy stuff was happening in this room. And so I finally crawl over to where everybody's like in this big giant group cuddle hug. And I was like, I don't know what just happened to me, but I want more of this. More of this, please. And so I finally got some food in my body. I felt grounded. Of course, now the yoga festival's over. I'm like, no wonder people were like raving about this experience. And so I go on his website and he's got like a retreat link posted. It doesn't work. So I reach out to them and I was like, hey, really want to spend some time with you guys. Notice your retreat link is broken. Happy to help you with your website if you need help, because clearly nothing's working on there. And the next thing I know, I'm on tour with a shaman for 3 years. Right. So
Is that how it happened?
yep, totally. My offer
Holy
to
shit.
to like my desire to learn more. And this is like those nudges from the universe, like when we're quiet and can actually pay attention, right? And follow
Mhm.
the things that feel like yummy and yes to you. It opened up to something else. So I go out to where he was in Ojai at the time living.
Who was it? Tell us the name of the person again.
Yeah, it was Michael Brian Baker of the Breath Center. And I go out
Okay.
to Ojai, California, and sit with Diana at the time, who was managing their website. We talk, and then the next, like, I help them like reorganize some of their website stuff. They'll end up getting somebody else to do it. And the next thing I know, like, he's like, hey, do you want to come and help support at these ceremonies? So now I'm doing like yoga festivals. We're doing different things all over Southern California. Went up to Canada for a festival up there. Got to bring my
So
sister with
cool.
me, my other sister. It was like, and so we just kept going. And like all these people kept having these really profound experiences, except for me. Now, my profound experience was like the thing I was grasping so hard to have would not come back.
So
It would
you were
not.
trying to like re-enter that experience
Totally.
and it wasn't happening.
I was forcing it. Like I was attached to the outcome. And for almost a year and a half, I did not have an experience like that again.
Wow.
Right. And so, but we always get the medicine we need. Right. And so it was really beautiful to be able to hold and support and witness people go through these transformational processes. And people would walk out of rooms and be like, did they spray DMT in there? And there'd be crying and breakdown and people rebirthing and shaking out trauma. And like, I mean, the healing just from the breath, right? Just from 20 minutes of breathing, people were like having these profound experiences. And it was such a gift to be able to hold space and to witness this. And I also learned a lot about having energetic hygiene so that you don't take on all of the stuff that people are releasing. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, like really living this, like almost like the infinity sign, because you're just like looping, like it's all the energy is going around. Like, how do you get to navigate it? And so from there I started to like hold my own breath work ceremonies. And I would say, that's probably one of the first modalities. Yoga opened the door, and yoga and like breath work was like the rocket ship, right? That just took me into
Yeah.
the next level of things. And it's a tool that you don't need anything for. Like, you just carry it around with you every single day. And we're just like, we breathe like 20,000 times, right? Without even thinking about it in a day. That's how much we breathe.
Yeah.
And if we actually put
Yeah.
intention to our breath, we can start to move some of the energetics that are like stored in our bodies. Because what we think about is like, if you think about any animal, and this is kind of how we explain breath work. You think about any animal, you smack a dog, right? Tell them bad. You hit a deer. What happens? They get up, they shake off their trauma, and then they go. But us as
Yep.
humans, when we're like, be a good girl, don't cry. What happens? We just like tense up, we freeze,
Tense
we
up.
fight, we do something, but we don't shake it off. And that's like, these are just part of the kind of the chatter, the shoulds, right? My should is like,
Yep.
oh, you need to look at how you're dressing because people are going to look at you. And then I'm like worried about belonging in the world. It's like, well, that's
Right.
why, right? Because this chatter is like, that was not mine. That was actually implanted in my beingness because of somebody
Mm-hmm.
else's fear. And so the breath allows us to actually come back into and through some of those moments, but it also opens
Yeah.
us up a lot into even, new possibilities and creativity. And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
same coin, two sides, depending on where you're at, you're always getting the medicine that you need. And it's such an
Mm-hmm.
amazing and powerful tool that, again, anybody can do for the most part. Anybody can
Yeah.
do.
So I have a couple questions, and
Yeah,
you said a couple of things, and I'm probably going to ask you for like rapid fire answers to these in case like people who aren't as
sure.
familiar with some of the terms that you used. But before I do that, I want to ask you, did so there's a lot of people, there's a lot of um stigma
Mm,
around some of this, or particularly like depending on where you are, like it's some places of the world or even of our country, like it's safe to explore things
sure.
like this, and in a lot of areas it's really not safe, depending how you grew up religiously, like depending on you know where what circle you run with. I mean, like some of this stuff is very like it has a stigma around it. So my question is, when you started exploring these alternative pathways to peace, like yoga, I would say is pretty accepted, right?
Yeah.
um Breath work, you start getting a little bit more like, what is this,
Mhm.
what does this mean? So was it safe for you, like as you started exploring these alternative healing modalities or just like practices, did you feel like you were like that the people that in your circle and the people that loved you accepted that, or was it
Yeah.
something you had to kind of do in secret?
I think like yoga here in Florida, I was practicing fine. Breath work out in California. California is a very like liberal and free place, so not so much there. Um, from my surrounding audience, I think there's definitely some curiosity. There's definitely some people that looked at me sideways, and there's other people that don't want to do it like are totally against it. I mean, one of the other modalities I use is Cambo, right? My dad called me like I was in a cult last week. And so it's like, you know, it really, for me, when I was going through this stuff, it was like I was so much leaning into the nudges of the universe that I didn't even hear any of the noise of anything else.
Mm,
Right. And
that's
so it's
good.
like just me being on my path. And for those of you who are like on the edge and you're afraid about what people might think, like there's some medicine in that for you alone, because it's like, Why is
Yeah.
their opinion of you greater than your calling?
Mm.
And even if I look at religion, right? We talk about in the Bible that God blew breath into man.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
Mm-hmm.
he became alive. And like, why wouldn't we harness that same power that he gifted to us?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's like, it just depends on your perspective. Like, we can find a reason for or against anything that you want to do in life and tie it to religion or some type of dogma. Right. It's like, yeah, it's
Yep.
it's it's a challenge. It's a challenge to do something and explore things, unconventional paths, right? That's why we're talking about this, to things that may not be commonplace. But guess what? Those things
Right.
that got you here are not going to get you to where you want to be. So it's time to start exploring something bigger than yourself.
So true. Yeah, freedom, the word freedom, like it has a lot of power to it. And when you think of what that means, it's like, yeah, I want freedom. But freedom is not easily obtained.
Mm,
It is not easily obtained. It is such a surrender. In order to really, like, you could say you want freedom all day long, but to really walk in the path of what freedom actually is
mm,
is brave. It's really brave.
yeah, totally.
So,
Totally.
okay, rapid fire, a couple of things.
Yeah.
You said holotropic
Yeah. So
breathing. What is that?
it's a type of breath, right? And so it's somewhat kind of forceful. Definitely look it up, but it's all through the mouth, right? It's a type of breathing and modality. So there's several different types of breath that you can do. Box breathing, we call ours ceremonial, could also be called shamanic. There is like heart breath, but the holotropic breath is fairly well known. I think it's like Stan Groff's breath. And so if you're into the breathwork world, you'll understand what that means. If you're not, check it out. It's just another modality, but it's just a different rhythm and pace that you're using your breath. And so there's a variety of ways that you can actually like immerse yourself into the breathwork world.
And each of those ways has like a purpose, like it's tied to like a certain type of outcome. Is
Somewhat.
that
I
is
mean,
that
somewhat. Some of it's more feminine, some of it's more masculine, some of it just depends. Like some of it's performance based, but ultimately I would say like if you drop all the labels, which again, like I think this part of this, the curious and Zen curious is like, oh, here's the thing. Let me be curious about what this does, not necessarily be attached to what somebody's going to tell me, but so I can go in and have my own lived experience of it, right? And then
so
just like
true?
anything, like, you know, there's 100 different yoga teachers and there's 100 different yogas, but at the core, there is the postures, right?
Right.
And so at the core, there's the breath. And then there's all the different modalities that are named for the different variations of breath work. And I think some of them you'll feel different than the other ways, right? And so,
Right.
yeah, I hope that helps
Okay.
explain it a little bit. Yeah.
Yep, I think it's great. You said that the guy leading the breath work was singing Ikeros. What's that?
So Icaros are like shamanic native to the indigenous people of, in this particular instance, they are from Peru. So the Andean people that live up in the Andean mountains. And the Icaros are sung to bring in different spirits, right? So they talk in honor of the
Okay.
land, they bring in the animals and plants and all of those types of things. So it's like a song
Chanting,
to
kind
the
of.
earth, kind of like a song, but it's in a Peruvian language, or I think this one is in Quechua. I think I'm not 100% positive, but yeah. So they use the native language to actually evoke the feelings and essence of the land.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now this one is a little bit probably have its own episode, but you said you were astral projecting into the festival,
Yeah,
walking
like
around.
basically like my body was in the room but my spirit was out in the festival, and I literally could see like the vendors and the people. And so like I was having this experience almost like a hologram experience, right, where my body was walking around and nobody could see me, but my physical body was in this room. And so it was unlike anything I had ever experienced before in my life.
Yeah, just I have to say this because when you said that, it reminded me of something. I was playing basketball with my son yesterday, and he goes, "Mom, where do you go when you dream?" And I
Mm.
was like, "That is a super interesting question, Maximus. Where do you think? What? Tell me what you think." And he was like, "Do you like leave your body and like go to the place where you're dreaming. And I was like, this is kind of like what you were talking about in the beginning. You start when you're young, you have questions. You almost have like
Mm,
intuitions about things. And then, I could have easily said, no, that's, you can't do that. That's
yeah.
what are you saying? That's not what actually happens. Who knows if that's what does, or that doesn't happen, or it does
Sure.
happen, like, just I want to just continue to encourage his curiosity around that kind of
Mhm.
stuff and not shut him down. But
Yeah.
also kind of the same idea of astral projection. I just
Yeah,
like,
totally. I
you
think
are not where your body is.
as soon as we think we know everything, we're dying, in some
And you're
ways.
probably wrong. Like, once you fixate on this is the way that it is. And even, from a religion standpoint, Michael and I were talking about, Michael, my husband, we were talking about this last night. And this, it's like you just said, the second you say, this is the way that it is, it's like you shut yourself off from every possibility, from growing, from expanding. I mean, it's just like our human experience is so limited.
So,
Our spiritual experience is so expansive.
mhm.
And so I feel like when I'm in my spiritual like being, there is no definitive. There is, everything is like, it's possible. But
Yeah.
when I'm in my human experience, it feels a lot safer to be like, oh yeah, I know that's the way that it is.
Yeah.
This is the way that it is. But at the same time, be doubting that is it, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, a great point and something that I learned in like my coaching program where we study ontology, which is like the study of language, right? One of the big things that we learn is that we have agency or choice in every single moment, right? And we
Hmm.
really look at like worldviews and perspectives. And if we can understand the worldview, like the context that somebody's operating from, it gives us a better insight to their perspective. And so, to your point, it's like, if we're so confined to a limited worldview, we'll never see beyond those walls. Right.
Yeah.
And not that what you're
Yeah.
saying is like saying, seeing, living, or believing is wrong. It is a truth of many truths that exist out there in this world. And so that's
Yep.
really, at least for me, it's like the curiosity piece of finding your Zen is about just living into those questions to see what else
Yeah.
is possible, to not make yourself right
Hmm.
all the time, but maybe there are many truths on the same path. Right. And so, how do
Hmm.
we get there? How do we allow ourselves to feel comfortable, right, in present, to even explore those moments, to be able to see what else is out there? Yeah.
So true. And it's like the second you try to attach to something or like definitively say this is the way that it is, it really closes you off from your ability to love.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, that's kind of like an odd way of getting there. But like, if I in the periods of time in my life where I've been like, this is the way that it is, then I've been so closed off to being able to see anyone else, to
Hmm.
even see them,
Yeah.
because I'm only seeing what I believe and wanting them to see it the same way that I do.
Yeah. 100%. I 100% agree with that. And it also, like, yeah, it's like this is where the magic merges, right? It's like we were talking about in the
Hmm.
beginning, it's like the ultimate act of surrender creates this like a buffet of possibilities. And how do we play into
Hmm.
that? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So, I'd like we've talked kind of more broadly about your Zen experience, but what I think where I think I'd like to go now is, what does this look like on a day-to-day basis lived out? Like, how does your personal practice or your habits support you, or maybe when they're not supporting you? Like what does this look like day to day?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's in flow and sometimes it's a shit show, if I'm totally honest, right? Because my
Yep.
humanness is like, wants to be the performer and be the responsible one and the professional one. And I give up the practice with myself. And as soon as I start to do that, everything turns sideways, right? And so, you know,
Mm.
and this is the game of having a human experience. We're not perfect. We are perfectly imperfect. We're going to go upside down, sideways, backwards, forwards. And ultimately, the game for me is like, how do I just find compassion with myself so that when I do fall off the wagon, like I get back on, right?
Yeah.
And so really, like, what does it look like? It looks like a variety of things. And I think that's what I'm really excited about to share on the show is like, it is not just one thing. It is like, I would get bored if I only did one thing.
Yeah.
It's like I lean into astrology, I lean into human design, I lean into breath work, I lean into yoga. I go to retreats, I do a lot of plant medicine, I work with Cambo, like there are 500 things that I like have to pull out of my box. And every morning it's like I sit with a glass of warm water and I pray to the water and just like thank it for being here, thank it for helping move anything through my body. I typically journal, right, for at least 10 to 15 minutes and I try and read something. Like those are like three things I pretty much do every single morning, right? And if I do those three
Hmm.
things, I set myself up for like, okay, I've taken time for myself. I prayed for what I want to come into existence and like honoring my body for the day. I've got to empty my head a little bit and also learn something new, right?
So that I love what you were just saying, but I want to ask something because I think there's a lot of people who want to do something like what you just described, but they say, "Oh, I don't have any time." So like your morning ritual, your morning routine, how long does it take you to get
I mean,
through that?
20, 30 minutes maybe at the most. Even if it's only 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes, but it's better than no
Right.
minutes, right? It's like, if it's only just a glass of water, then it's only just a glass of water,
Right.
right? If you can't meditate and sit there for 30 minutes, do it in the shower. It doesn't have to look like anything like, all zenned out. It doesn't have to be what you think it is. Like, just
Right.
figure out how do you bring if you want to breathe on your 20-minute drive to work. Turn off
Yep.
the radio. Let your head empty. Like it gets to be whatever it is that feels good for you at the end of the day. And then usually
Yeah.
during the day, I'll get up and I'll go put my feet in the earth. Like those are things that pretty much happen consistently. And then when I have time, I do breath work and I have time, I go to a yoga class. And I've been going to the gym. So that's been my new thing. Like lately, when I get stressed out, I'm like, I want to go for a run. I'm like, who am I? I don't even run. Like what's happening? But it's another way to move the energy. All right, let me put on some music and jam out so that I can move the energy and I don't have to be in this stuck or stagnant place. I think a lot of us, and part of the reason that I feel like I'm even here is because I got so fed up with myself and I was like, all right, how am I going to change? And this morning I was listening to Joe Dispenza and it's like, how you think informs how you act, informs how you feel. And so
Yep.
if we can start with that 10-minute like dump of all the things in your head and fill it up with something good and juicy. And if it's your social media is like making you feel like you hate the world, get off social media, change the people that you're following. Like there is so much good in there. You just got to get through the filters of
Yep.
everything else. Yeah.
Yep. So true. Okay, so when you feel like you're in, or let me pos- position the question like this. Is there something that you feel like triggers you to get out of flow? Or
Mhm.
is there any like thing that you say, okay, if this is happening, I recognize I start to stop being in flow?
I think it's more like again from the Joe thing I was listening to this morning, like when I start to notice my emotions are like in the lower vibration and I'm stressed and overwhelmed and I can't get out of my own freaking way, I'm out of flow, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's not like, oh, there's a thought and I caught the thought. Oh, or because I thought I have to show up for everybody, then I went into the meetings and I overbooked myself. Now I
Yeah.
haven't been in the action. And then afterwards, I feel like crap. And usually I don't even catch myself until I feel like crap sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
instead of being like up here where it was like, oh, wait, there you are again, Lauren, thinking you have to like prove your worth and show up to something that doesn't feel good to you. And then I just do it anyways. And then I go do the thing. Right. It's like, then I take myself out of flow real fast. And then I
Hmm.
like afterwards, I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have done something differently. I get to do it differently moving forward. And that's where
Yeah.
really where when we create the choice of like how we get to make things move in the future version of ourselves, like that's where the shift really gets to happen. And sometimes it takes a little reflection to get there, which is
Yeah.
again another reason for journaling, like or just reflecting on your day, talking about it with your spouse so that you have somebody that can call you out on your stuff, like however you get to do it.
Yeah. So when you're feeling like frustrated or angry or out of flow, do you feel like you recognize it pretty quickly or um so two questions. Do you feel like you recognize it pretty quickly now or is it something like you notice it's going on for a couple of days and you're like, "Holy shit, I am way out of flow.
Yeah.
I need to I need to do X, or not I should, but like I need to do this for myself. Like there's
Yeah.
something I'm obviously neglecting that myself needs that's
Mm,
creating this. So how do I
I
get out of
don't. It's like, it's I think there's no perfect recipe. Like it's not one way all the time, right?
it?
And yeah. So sometimes it's harder than others, but I almost like think about it like about food. Like sometimes I'll like give myself a treat and then I'll keep eating the treats for like days. And then 4 days later, it's like I feel like crap because I ate treats for 4 days instead of just having
I'm
it
on
that
that
one.
cycle right now.
Yeah, like instead of
The
having it one
Lucky
time.
Charms.
So it's like I'll skip my morning practice today and then tomorrow and then the next day. And then, it's a week later and you're like, holy crap, what happened to myself? Right. It's like you made a concession one time and then it turns into like this kind of cataclysmic thing where it just keeps happening. And so, you know, sometimes it's quicker than others, but it's just again about coming back to the commitment of things so that you can move forward. And for me, like how do I rectify it or like come back to Zen? It really depends on where I am, but a lot of times it's like I have a backyard with a pool and there's pavers out there and sometimes I just go out there and lay on the earth and I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm breathing. Like, okay, come back into the moment, right? And it's like and sometimes I just lay on the earth and cry like my mother's holding me because that's what I
Mm,
need, to move through that emotion. And so but a lot of times it's my breath.
mm,
A lot of time it's my breath, like especially like that minute that I was in the concert and it's like I'm up front. I see the time. I'm anxious about the time. I'm anxious about the people. It's like, oh, what happens if I just breathe here? Can I shift how I'm
mm.
feeling? Right. And a lot of times when I do psychedelic plant medicines, the same thing. It's the breath,
Yeah.
coming back to the breath because the breath
Hmm.
can shift everything for you. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything that like we haven't talked about yet that you feel like is
gosh.
important for our listeners to know about, whether it's about you, your practice, just like words of wisdom?
If there's anything I want people to take away, and part of my commitment to doing this with you, Kiera, is like, I just want people to be in play and exploration, right? To be
Mm,
curious about what else is out there because again, in my humble opinion, it's like the way we've been doing things are not going to continue to serve us. And it's
mhm,
time to start to broaden our horizons and be in play with maybe some other modalities that serve you. And one of the things that I do every single day is I help doctors. Like I help doctors create practices, but more importantly, I help doctors create time with their patients so that they can actually listen to themselves. And you
mm,
hold, as you being our listeners, hold this really beautiful innate wisdom that if we can tap into it, like we can slow down, we can quiet our minds, and we can be in our own inherent wisdom, you already know what it is.
yeah.
You know when there's yeses and you
Yeah.
know when there's hell no's, and nobody's got to force you to do anything different. And that's when I feel out of flow, right? When I'm doing something that my body or my wisdom's already telling me a
So
no to.
true. So true.
Yeah. And so that would be my encouragement is like, just go play. And hopefully we get to bring on a whole bunch of people that can teach you how to be in this exploration, that can open your eyes up to a new modality or instrument and really, yeah, enliven a piece of your life that maybe you didn't even know existed or a feeling that you didn't know was possible before.
Mm, yeah. And I think that's what you just described is really what we want to do here. Like
Yeah.
our whole purpose of coming together and doing this, because kind of like we were talking about earlier, of there's a lot of opportunity to listen to the noise, to
Mhm.
listen to the shoulds, to listen to the expectations, whether they're self-imposed or external.
Yeah.
And it's brave and it's bold and it's courageous to do something different than that. And for me, and in my relationship with you, Lauren, like I feel like that idea of play and exploration is really um honored and encouraged, and that's why I love like your energy so much, because it feels safe to talk about all the things that it doesn't feel safe to talk about everywhere. But
Yeah.
I want to be able to um not only for myself but also help other people be able to just like, it's okay to not do what everybody else is doing. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to think that plant medicine is weird and you're not really interested in that, but maybe you want to do breath work. Like, all of
Totally.
it's okay. Everything is okay,
Yeah.
you know?
It's a
So,
buffet, this life that we live in. Don't
yeah,
eat the same stuff all the time.
yeah,
Expand the palate, right? So,
exactly. Exactly. So, other than the zencurious.com, if people wanted to find you or learn more about some of the things that you're doing, is there anywhere that you would send them or tell them where they could find out more about you?
yeah. So my personal website is onehealingbreath.com. I would say check that out. You can learn more about my coaching and human design and breath work and Cambo. And yeah, from there, I've got a whole bunch of branches, but we'll drop some handles in the description so you can follow along with our paths and hopefully reach out, ask questions. We want to know what you guys want to learn and explore and help us be good curators of content based upon what it is that you all are curious about when it comes to Zen.
Awesome. Love it. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you again for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Zen Curious. You can find any of the resources we discussed today in the show notes. And if you want to connect with us further, find us on Instagram at the Zen Curious. Or you can leave us a comment, a review, or go to our website and subscribe to our email. We look forward to